Hi there. Before I get to my Ukraine War Update extra video that I filmed earlier today, I've just been to a funeral, so just come back to upload that video. I know I've already done two videos today, just been a really crazy busy day. But I have to say something about the over 90 missiles that have just been sent by Russia into Ukraine. In fact, two missiles have gone over into Poland, which is provoking a whole load of discussion at the moment. So just for those who don't know, I'm sure everyone knows that Russia have retaliated as they did with Kharkiv. They sent 85 missiles. Then they've sent, looks like, over 90 missiles into Ukraine today to hit energy infrastructure and other important sort of points, other targets. Ukraine have said that they've shot down over 70. That still leaves, 20 plus missiles finding their targets or finding a target. I don't know what the exact figures are and whether that is accurate. It's all sort of going off there at the moment. Air raid sirens all over Ukraine. There were this afternoon, and lots of people condemning this activity, particularly with the fact that two have gone over into Poland. So the US Pentagon said today that it could not confirm reports that two Russian missiles had crossed into Poland and killed two people. However, pretty much everyone is saying that is the case. And Moldova has lost electricity. It's had that disrupted in at least parts of Moldova, probably because they're getting some of their electricity from Ukraine, although I don't know, that might need confirming. Loads of countries are coming to stand with Poland about this. There is possibly a rumor that the wreckage of a Russian missile was hit by Ukrainian air defense. So it could be that a missile, at least one of them landing in Poland, could have been a result of air defense from Ukraine. So a Polish reporter on Blast tonight, my sources in the services say that what hit Prigozhin is most likely the remains of a Russian rocket shot down by the armed forces of Ukraine. So that might change people's views on exactly what has happened. I don't know if that's just one missile rather than both. But either way, Poland is consulting at the moment. So this is what someone in the know says, who is a former NATO official, saying, interesting, it will not result in Article 5. So it's not like Poland's been purposefully attacked and therefore all NATO members can come and support Poland. But Poland will likely call for Article 4 consultations and would be within their rights for proportionate retaliation. It will be interesting to see the missile track and if Poland fires on the launch site if in Belarus. So Article 4 is kind of what's called for emergency. So it's considered the starting point for major NATO operations and therefore is intended for either emergencies or situations of urgency. This is according to Wikipedia. It officially calls for consultation over military matters when, quote, the territorial integrity, political independence, or security of any of the parties is threatened. Upon its invocation, the issue is discussed in the NAC, so in the sort of NATO Council, and can formally lead into a joint decision or action, logistic, military, or otherwise, on behalf of the alliance. It has been officially invoked 7 times since the alliance's creation. And here it lists all the times it has been: 2003, 2012, shooting down of a Turkish military jet over Syria, the Iraq War, Syrian forces shelling Turkish cities, Crimean crisis in March 2014, so on and so forth. So if they do that, it'll be interesting to see what the response will be, but it might depend on, on this kind of idea that whether either one or both of those missiles were maybe hit off course by well, of course, neither would have been intended to go to Poland. But if we talk about the so-called error probable, so the CEP of a missile, if 50% of your missiles hit within whatever the precision range is for that missile, so it might be sort of 300 meters for a missile. So if 50% of the missiles hit within 300 meters of the desired target, then that's still precise. So the other 50% can just land anywhere. In this case, in Poland. Now, it would have been intended for Ukraine, but it's landed in Poland. Did it land in Poland because of air defense? Did that kind of hit it off course or whatever? Or did it land in Poland just because it's too imprecise and the target was near Poland, or it malfunctioned or whatever? What is a basis upon which Poland can, have a response to this, and what would their response want to be? Would they want to escalate? All these sorts of questions that will come out over the next sort of however long. But I thought I'd make some comment on the fact that Russia have retaliated like a sort of vindictive, petulant child who has been felt they've been wronged and then is just lashing out. In this case, it makes you wonder, well, if this is kind of part of your strategy, why haven't you been sending out all these missiles over the last week? You're just, I don't know, there's something about this that reminds me of just a petulant child, um you know just getting really angry and throwing all their toys out the pram, except this is far more deadly and horrific. So they've launched those waves of strikes right across Ukraine, targeted Kiev region, Kharkiv, Poltava, Mykolaiv, Dnipro, Zhytomyr, and all these other places, like all the length and breadth of Ukraine. Anyway, I'll now give you over to myself in my Ukraine War Update Extra. There you go. Hello, welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. I've spoken to you enough today. This is just a quick update extra. So this is where I give you some juicy nuggets to give you greater contextual understanding and more information about the conflict in Ukraine. On the back of two map update videos I did earlier today. Okay, let's get into it. What can I tell you? Well, Canada. Well done. Thank you, Canada. They've announced, Justin Trudeau has announced that they will provide $500 million in additional military assistance for Ukraine to assist the armed forces of Ukraine in defending their country. This will go toward military surveillance and communications equipment, fuel, and medical supplies. So that's quite a range of stuff that will obviously be hugely appreciated by the Ukrainians. So that's brilliant stuff. And to give the UK some props, UK is so far the biggest donor to Ukraine Energy Support Fund. UK provider have provided, £7 million for 850 generators, so that vital facilities have power. We need all partners to step up and support and show Putin his attempts to destroy Ukraine will be met with fierce resistance. Okay, so that's the foreign minister of the UK has said. That's really interesting because the UK are in trouble at the moment. Like financially, economically, we're in trouble. I know people are going to disagree with this, but there's a couple of reports that just come out to say that Brexit is going to really, really start hurting us soon. If you look at the stats for our country in terms of economic bounce back, we are basically one of the lowest in Europe. So when you look at the G7, seven biggest economies in the world, the bounce back is pretty big. Quarterly GDP growth from Q4 2019 to Q3 2022. Everyone, even Germany's got a little bit of an increase. We are negative, and the idea is that can't blame global problems alone. Clearly, UK-specific issues in the response to global challenges, given the UK hasn't grown since Q4 2019, uniquely in G7, since actual Brexit too, and during this Parliament. So the UK economy is less flexible, responsive, and productive. So loads of issues, and in fact, there is an economist that basically laid that out the other day. I won't play you that. I don't want to get into the politics of this, but what I want to say, because I think it's quite interesting, this is that the UK is still making the right signals. We're worried about Rishi Sunak coming in as to whether he would be as strong as even Liz Truss, but particularly Boris Johnson before. And he has been saying all the right things. But I wonder going forward, I live in a place called Hampshire in the UK, which is one of the biggest geographic counties in the UK, and a pretty well-off area in terms of the UK as a whole. The leader of Hampshire County Council, which is a huge organisation, has basically warned that they're going to go bankrupt. And if the Hampshire County Council is going bankrupt, that does not bode well and Kent as well, apparently, does not bode well for the UK finances. Like austerity is looking like it's back on the cards. We are in trouble economically. We've got a cost of living crisis at the same time that BP and Shell are making, and ExxonMobil, but BP and Shell obviously more UK based, are making record breaking profits. Everyone else is really, really, really suffering. So why I'm talking about all this is will UK continue to be this generous to Ukraine? And that's an open question. It would be really interesting to see what we do, whether people in the UK will start going, hang on, why are we continue to give that much money to Ukraine if our own like county council can't afford to put the bins out? You know, or take the bins in, you know, whatever. And this could be a growing issue for the UK. And I'm somewhat worried because I think it's only going to get worse, like the economic situation for the UK, and with given the global recession, doom and gloom outlook, and the UK appears to be on the rough end of that. Uh, that's not going to be that's going to add more challenge to Ukraine going forward. So there you go. That's my opinion. Anyway, let's give the UK some more props. Here's a Martlet being fired, rocket from a sort of shoulder-held piece of kit. Someone seems happy about that. Yay! And an explosion. There we go. So probably some kind of drone that's hit. But success. So what is a Martlet? Well, the Martlet is a lightweight multi-role missile, LMM. It was, I think, initially designed to be fired from the air, from helicopters, and it's got quite a history of development. Can be used at sea. Basically, it can be used pretty much anywhere. I think in lots of different roles. That's why it's called a multi-role, right? Clues in the name. Loads of things going on there. Anyway, just to get to the bottom of all this sort of talk about the missile, this is where you see it. You can see it on these tripods, or not tripods, on these stands of like 3. I don't know if they got some of them in Ukraine or here too, or the single one held on the shoulder as you just saw. Yeah, so it's a flexible and versatile weapon. The ability to be fired from the same launch systems as HVM only increases that flexibility. So all these different systems it can be fired from, vehicle launched and shoulder launched. So that is a decent bit of kit, very similar, I guess, to the Stinger and other such missiles. There we go. There's a single one on the shoulder. That's what I was trying to look for. It can be fired from the shoulder launcher as below. As well as the other one. So yeah, and not only that, but the Brimstone missile. What is a Brimstone missile? Brimstone missile the UK could send to Ukraine explained. So this is from some time back. This is April. The Brimstone missiles were developed by arms manufacturer MBDA for the Royal Air Force. They've been used by British forces in Libya and Syria and are typically launched from fast jet aircraft such as a Typhoon. In Ukraine, the missiles are set to be fired from land towards targets. Defence analyst Paul Beavers said the missiles can be very effective fired from land, and most importantly, they will work. Integration onto a truck isn't going to be that difficult, he said. The engineers at MBDA will have already thought of this and probably be working on it as we speak. So that's exactly what's happened. Check this out. So this is the Brimstone being fired from the side of a truck. 2 of them. And they are a pretty decent missiles that can be used with a variety of sort of guidances on board, I think, both millimeter wave and active radar homing, and also laser guidance as well. So it's a dual mode. So that's really useful. Good to see them being used. And being used, you know, in these innovative ways. You don't have to like fix them on the back of some kind of military vehicle. You can do that. On the other side, here is the Krasnopol. So the Krasnopol is the Russian version of the Excalibur, and I think it is pretty decent as a laser guided artillery projectile. So that we just looked at laser guided missile. This is a laser guided piece of artillery. Now this is obviously, if you're pro-Ukrainian, uncomfortable watching. There's a few points of interest here. So there we have the guidance from the drone above, and that APC being taken out. So here we have another. Now, why I wanted to mention this is, you know, like never park up next to another vehicle. Just I know, I presume that's a vehicle that's just been hit. They've come in to help out. I just think, yeah, that's never a wise thing, because that's going to happen. I mean, goodness, I've seen this so many times with the Russians grouping together, and I would just make a rule, like if I was any kind of commander, which is there's a golden rule. It doesn't matter what happens, never put another vehicle next to another vehicle. Just don't do it. You're just ripe for being attacked. Anyway, there you go. So that's a Krasnopol, and that is a very useful bit of kit, but not much news about that being used, probably because they just don't have much of it. Rather like the missiles used in the air, they have very few guided versus a lot of unguided or dumb munitions. That's been the case with the Russian ordnance throughout the whole conflict, and with NATO forces that percentage is swapped. So there was some talk that Russia maybe have something less than 10% guided and over 90% unguided, whereas NATO or US say operate to a 10% unguided and 90% plus guided. And they've worked so hard over the last couple of decades on their guided. I talked about the Excalibur shell before, just using that because it's more effective. Yes, it's more expensive, but it's more effective. You're not going to get collateral damage of killing civilians, but also you can fire quite close to your own troops and know that you won't hit them. And that's really, really important. So the US has been particularly expending a lot of money, time, and effort on R&D for guided munitions, and Russia has that capability, but just corruption, whatever, I don't know, or it's just not part of their doctrine, which is flatten everywhere, walk and put your flag there. It's different for NATO, and they consider much more efficiency and hitting the particular target they want with the fewest amount of attempts, and a lack of collateral damage to other people, because it's about PR. I don't think Russia is so concerned with PR. Go into Libya, flatten everywhere, come out, job done. Here's this intercepted call that I played you a minute of earlier today. I just thought it might be worth playing you the whole lot of this. It's just fascinating. So this is talking about whole regiments that he claims has just been destroyed because they are just effing meat. Up near Svatova.
по госпиталю 20 убитых, 40 там с чем-то раненых. А по госпиталю это те, кого туда привозят в госпиталь. И он дает отчет, соответственно, вот у нас столько-то 200-х, столько-то 300-х. А вывозить, выносить, блядь, раненых, вывозить убитых, никто их не вывозит вообще. Им вообще похуй. Он вчера нам комбат толкал, нахуй. Ребята, вам нужно 2 недели продержаться, потом, ебать, подойдут типа того, что, блядь, какие-то пиздатые клапана, и они будут уже держать оборону, а нас типа обратно отправят. Как нахуй 2 недели держаться, когда нас здесь, блядь, всего 12 сколько там дней, а у нас уже полка нет, 500 тысяч человек погибло.
This is the idea that people really are being used as cannon fodder. So he's talking about how, we've got to hold out, like I talked to you about in the previous video. We've got to hold out for 12 days, but how can we do that? For 2 weeks, if in 12 days 2,500 of our comrades have been killed, an entire regiment wiped out. And he's saying, we shouldn't even be on the front line, as he goes on to say. The commandant company, not trained for combat. But here we are, sent to the front line. 5 people who've never even served in the army. They volunteered. So the training there is just fire a few bullets, job done, you're now trained. We'll bring you vehicles in 3 days, bring you weapons, and off you go. Regiment commander disappeared, and they got told to go and clean up operations, clean out houses, but instead, which they agreed to go on voluntarily, let's go and clear up some urban areas. But then they sent us to an empty field saying, you guys entrench, hold on as long as you can. Other guys will come in 2 weeks and do something. You just wait. We have 100 people. Before that, 2,500 couldn't do it, and 100 of us must hold for 2 weeks. Yesterday, they took away our weapons. We are considered deserters now. We're not running, we're here. Even the guys who are crawling injured, so 300 is that means injured, carried them on their backs for 30 kilometers because no vehicles were provided for evacuation, and they're considered deserters. If you want to carry them, it's your business. How you be getting out there, no one gives a damn. Those guys who carried them 30 kilometers are here now. Put us in prison. We won't go there again. They say they'd rather serve 10 years but stay alive. They won't go there. They're told, you are deserters, guys. You didn't complete your order. You dumped your officers who weren't there. We have nothing. How can we fight against mortars and tanks? With pistols and assault rifles and AKSs. Just fascinating. And one has to assume that is true. I mean, I can't imagine that is someone just an actor doing that. I mean, it could be, but there's so many of these and they're all saying the same thing. But so I don't think that is propaganda. I do think this is propaganda, and I love this. It's amazing what that they say these things out loud. It really is. So meanwhile, in Russia, pundits and experts are appalled that their saboteurs and sleeper cells aren't blowing up local tractor factories in Ukraine. They propose recruiting Ukrainian children from disadvantaged families for Russia's nefarious plans against the nation it invaded. Just absolutely insane.
Смотрите, если мы берем людей, которые остаются на территории, которые сейчас под Российской Федерацией.
Российская территория.
Российская территория.
Russian territory, that's what you mean. Yes, of course.
Как бы действовал я?
What would I do?
Первое, что сделал, это создавал ячейки за счет того, чтобы
form cells by finding like-minded people. One way or another. You can always reach them through acquaintances.
Это первое. Второе.
I'd involve the children through games, especially if they are ideologically charged up. This is an excellent opportunity, guys. We're organising the underground. We also fund it. Man is a social animal. It's important for him to get approval from somewhere. If he's getting praised and financially supported, then everything comes together. What do we do with the adults? We'll work them for decades to come. Jesus. In order to convince them that it's better to be with the Russian Federation than with Ukraine. Just, I love that. What are you going to do with the adults then? We'll work them for years to come. And then they'll realise it'll be better to be in Russia. Well, after being worked, what, in a gulag? Yay, Russia, it's awesome. Likelihood is that 80% will accept. He's pulling this out of his arse. But there's always 10 to 15% who will vehemently reject it. Someone else talking about sleeper agents. Where are the partisans in the Kharkiv and Mykolaiv regions? Where are our agents over there? Why weren't we cultivating them? It's very surprising. Perhaps we didn't anticipate it would come to this. This is actually a really good point. So I have been wondering about the lack of partisan activity behind Ukrainian lines. Like there don't seem to be, you do occasionally hear about arrests and so on and so forth, but there really is very little news or no news about partisan activity behind Ukrainian lines from pro-Russian fighters. I wonder whether they're just struggling to get people willing to do that, whether it's too dangerous. Interesting. Why are we assuming that we aren't cultivating it? Because we aren't seeing the results. We aren't cultivating it because where's the news of it? Where are the diversions? Is anyone blowing up the tractor factory in Kharkiv? We aren't ready for the war that we started. Absolutely right. We keep calling it a special military operation. We're too shy to call it war, which is a huge problem, because with war, other laws come into play. Regarding teenagers, we started to talk, I'll be short and to the point. There are two ways of solving this problem. The first one is instrumental, the second ideological. The instrumental one is very simple. These guys are not usually attracted by the ideology. They're attracted by drive, by being needed. They live in marginal parts of society. For example, their parents are alcoholics. If someone needs them and will give them money, they can fund smartphones. This is a simple policy. The carrot rather than stick. For example, give up your handler from Ukraine's security service. We'll take you there. Sorry, it's going so quickly. I was trying to read this for people listening. Just because if you're listening as you're walking your dog or whatever, someone speaking Russian isn't gonna help you. But here's this guy discussing how to use disadvantaged children to become sort of sleeper agents. For example, give up your handler from Ukraine's security services and give money to it. We'll take you here into the youth counterintelligence service. You'll be here. We'll give you a uniform and a dagger. This sounds like snitching. How's it snitching? Someone from the Ukraine security service contacts you. Come to our counterintelligence and show who it is. And secondly, it's a stick. If you don't want to do it, you'll be harshly punished, which means we should threaten people. We need to work with the population. I've said it many times. Before and during the special military operation, telling Ukrainians that they don't exist, telling them that the Ukrainian language was created by the Austro-Hungarian General Staff, that it's fake, not real. It's just, we're riling them up against us. So this guy, in one of the previous ones I showed you, this is one of the guys who was actually saying reasonable stuff. And he's absolutely right. Like we're riling them up against us, telling them the Ukrainian language is not real, it's fake, and was invented. And it's just a Russian dialect. They're going to hate us. Why are we using the stick? Why are we threatening people when we should be, using other methods? If Russia wants to be successful among the population located in these territories, then we need to acknowledge their sense of self. But liberation of Ukraine from Nazism is an ideology. What other ideology do you need? That would matter if it would. So here's the problem with, these guys are all like arguing with each other here, but this guy who's being quite reasonable is obviously having to fight against people who think that Ukraine is still this Nazi state and everyone's ideologically brainwashed. And of course, that's not the case. And someone who's reasonably pointing this out is kind of, butting against a brick wall when it comes to what these opinions of Ukraine are, the dehumanization of Ukrainian, the non-existence of the Ukrainian state and culture. And then once you've done that, the next step is, let's use all their disadvantaged children as secret Russian agents to go and blow up tractor factories, is almost reasonable. It's not, it's utterly ridiculous. But if you have such warped ideas of what Ukraine is and who Ukrainians are, then you start coming up with crackpot plans to try and utilize those people. Anyway, so on and so forth. You get the picture. It's just, these TV shows are hugely fascinating insights, windows into the psyches of Russian propagandists. And occasionally there's a half reasonable person, but my goodness. Here's a Russian reporter on the front line who, and I won't play you all this, but you can go and find Dmitry, which is War Translated on Twitter. It's an interesting little monologue he gives here, which is to say that what are we doing here? What's the point here? Like, Zelensky's just gone to Kherson, which is literally kilometers away from our artillery units. Like, why? And he goes, why aren't we sending Lancets in there? Hubs? Why all these kind of like grads? Why aren't we flattening Kherson while Zelensky's there? What are we doing? Like, here we are putting our lives on the line, and we're not making sensible decisions. He went to Izium in the same way and nothing happened to him, and he's gone to here. He's this like nominal figure, he says. He's a figurehead. And although, he's not important and all this intrinsically as a human being, he's a representative of something. and we need to be taking him out. But instead, we watch on the news as he sort of lords it about Kherson, and he's got a point. You know, I don't understand why. Part of me thinks that if Russia really wanted to kill Zelensky, they could, and part of me thinks that, and then wonders why they haven't. And do they then think, well, if they did that, they would the wrath of the international community would really come against them? So it's like, oh, you know, damn did we do, damn did we don't. Anyway, interesting. I'll be interested to see what you think about that. And just to touch on Kherson, because I've done a video on that earlier today, the head of the Joint Press Center in the Defense Forces of South of Ukraine said that the Russians in the Kherson region are withdrawing troops 15 to 20 kilometers from the Dnipro in order to protect themselves from shelling by the armed forces of Ukraine. That's fascinating. So that's like being brought back to here. Just incredible that they are, you know, well, it's not. I suppose they must be very wary of the huge amounts of artillery and the ranged artillery that Ukraine have got on this side of the river. So they're pulling backwards, which means that Ukraine can push forwards and forwards and forwards, and eventually, you know, the Russians are right back here, and this then allows Ukraine arguably to cross the river with greater ease. So if they're pulling back from the river, then river crossings really are a thing that the Ukrainians are going to be trying, or have been trying, or are trying. I talked earlier about why the Russians aren't really in this Kimburn Spit area. Reporting from Ukraine has just done a really good video on this. Basically, you've got some issues. So if they're going to place artillery here, right, that can protect the Spit, that artillery is useless for actually being used against where the Ukrainians generally are over the other side of the river. So they're not going to waste artillery here. They're going to be putting it all around here. But even if they want to place it in a position where it can hit down the Spit, it's difficult, down the peninsula. It's difficult to move it there. This is a nature reserve which has very few roads, really muddy sort of. It's very difficult to get through that. So placing artillery there is not a good idea. Which means that they're not going to hit further into this area, and they don't really want to place artillery there because actually that's going to have a very limited use. Hitting, you know, most of its range will be water, and then hitting only sort of very slightly into this Ukrainian territory. So they're not going to bother putting artillery there. But what that then means is that their artillery is mainly based back here, and this then becomes an easy place for the Ukrainians to land on. There's no artillery protecting or defending this area. There's a few pillboxes that we've seen delivered along there, but that's not really going to do anything. And so there's no surprise that Ukrainians are taking advantage of this, because Russia obviously have a limited amount of artillery pieces to call into action and ammunition, it seems, because I've been really surprised at how little the Russian artillery has been working around here. Maybe I haven't heard the news or seen enough, you know, of the data. Maybe the data is out there and I just haven't seen it, but it seems like the Russian artillery has been relatively quiet compared to what the Ukrainians are doing, and most significantly around this Kimburn Spit area. So anyway, there you go. Last thing I'm going to say, completely different thing I'm going to talk about. SAS Rogue Heroes is a new BBC series out. If you like your war stuff, if you like the Peaky Blinders, so a sweary kind of stylized version. Apparently, this is actually quite accurate. There's a lot of the kit they use is accurate. A lot of the equipment, as in the mechanized equipment, the jeeps and stuff. The people they're representing are real. Like the Paddy, who's in that, was one of the most celebrated, you know, members of the British Armed Services over the whole of the war. He was hugely decorated, and this tells the story of the creation of the SAS, but it is stylized. It is made for a more modern audience, lots of swearing and stuff. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I like the Peaky Blinders. So if you like the Peaky Blinders, it's made by Stephen Knight, who wrote and created the Peaky Blinders. This is made by him. If you have an opportunity of seeing that, I don't know if you live around the world, whether you can, but SAS Rogue Heroes is a superb series. Really, really loving it. Anyway, there you go. Thanks for sticking by me and supporting the channel. Please like, subscribe, share. Thank you to all the members who have joined and those who have supported me through Buy Me a Coffee, YouTube. Thanks, or PayPal. Really appreciate that. That's enough from me today. I've got things to do. Take care, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.